The alarm on the briefing deck cut through the air like a blade, and I did not flinch. Around me, the room was already tense, packed with soldiers from 4 different worlds, all of us waiting for the mission screen to load. I stood near the back, arms folded, saying nothing, the way I always did. A tall reptilian soldier named Vren leaned toward his companions and laughed loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Look at him," he said, pointing a clawed hand at me. "The human never talks. Maybe he cannot. Maybe his kind only knows how to stand still and wait for orders." The insectoid beside him clicked his mandibles in amusement, the sound sharp and mocking. A third soldier, a smooth-skinned telepath named Sael, tilted her head as if reading my thoughts and finding nothing there worth noting. "Perhaps he is broken," she said, her voice smooth and cold. "Humans are new to this coalition, weak, emotional. It is a wonder they were allowed to join at all." I said nothing. I had learned long ago that silence was not weakness, it was control. But the soldiers around me did not know that, and they took my quiet as proof of everything they already believed about my species. The commanding officer, a broad-shouldered alien named Doran, stepped onto the platform at the front of the room. His presence silenced most of the chatter, though a few soldiers kept whispering among themselves, throwing glances my way. "This is a joint operation," Doran announced. "Coalition forces will enter hostile territory within the hour. Before deployment, all personnel ranks and clearances will display on the central screen for verification." A murmur moved through the crowd. This was standard procedure before any real mission, a formality meant to confirm that everyone in the room was who they claimed to be. Names would appear, one by one, along with rank, unit history, and clearance level. Vren crossed his arms and smirked at me from across the room. "Let us see what rank the Silent One holds. I am guessing the lowest tier. Perhaps he carries supplies. Perhaps he cleans the ship." A few soldiers laughed. I did not react. I kept my eyes on the screen as the names began to appear. One by one, the coalition soldiers were listed. Vren's name appeared first, along with his rank, a respectable mid-level command position. Sael's name followed, her clearance high due to her telepathic training. The insectoid soldier, whose name was Threk, showed a technical specialist rank, useful but unremarkable. Then the system paused. My name appeared on the screen, but instead of a rank, a small icon blinked beside it, a soft, repeating flash of amber light. The word beneath it read, "Pending verification." Vren laughed again, louder this time. "See? Even the machine does not know what to make of him. Perhaps there is no file. Perhaps he does not truly belong here." Sael's eyes narrowed slightly, though she said nothing yet. Threk's mandibles clicked in quiet amusement. I kept my expression calm. I had seen this delay before. It was not a glitch. It was a security protocol, one designed to strip away classification layers before revealing information that most soldiers in the room were never meant to see. The icon blinked 3 more times, then vanished. My rank appeared. The room went quiet in a way that felt almost physical, like the air itself had stopped moving. The text on the screen was not a standard coalition designation. It was a title none of them had ever seen before, marked with a symbol that most alien forces only recognized from old briefings about human military history, briefings usually followed by a warning to proceed with caution. Doran, standing at the front of the room, turned to look at the screen, then at me. His posture shifted slightly, the kind of shift that happens when someone realizes they have misjudged the room. Vren stopped laughing, his clawed hand slowly lowered to his side. "That cannot be right," he said, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "That rank does not exist in standard coalition record-keeping." "It does," Doran said quietly. "It exists in restricted human command files. Very few outside high command are ever briefed on it." Sael's telepathic senses, usually sharp and probing, seemed to falter. She stared at me as if trying to read something that was simply not there to read. because I had spent years training myself to keep my thoughts locked behind walls she could not touch. "You said nothing," she finally said, her voice quieter now. "All this time, you said nothing." "I did not need to," I answered. It was the first thing I had said since entering the room, and the sound of my own voice, calm and even, seemed to carry more weight than I expected. Threk's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. The room, once full of noise and mockery, had turned into something close to silence, the same silence I had carried with me the entire time. Doran cleared his throat and addressed the room. "For those who do not know, human forces maintain a classified division formed during a period of extreme crisis, a time when human worlds faced total destruction from threats that no coalition species had encountered before. Those who served in that division were trained under conditions most of you would find difficult to imagine. Silence was not a weakness in that training, it was survival. Every word spoken in the field could be tracked, intercepted, or used against a unit. Soldiers from that division learned to communicate through action, not words." He looked at me again. "It appears we have one of them standing among us." Vren's earlier confidence had completely drained from his posture. He straightened, and for the first time since I had joined this unit, he did not have anything to say. I decided it was time to speak, not out of anger, but because the moment called for clarity. "You assumed my silence meant weakness," I said, looking around the room. "You assumed my species was fragile because we are new to this coalition. But newness is not the same as inexperience. My world fought battles that nearly erased us before any of your species knew we existed. We learned to survive without soldiers who owed diplomacy their firepower. We learned to survive with strategy, patience, and control. That control includes knowing when not to speak." Sael lowered her eyes slightly, something rare for a telepath used to reading every room she entered. "We spoke carelessly," she admitted. "We assumed too much." "You did," I said, without malice. "But assumptions are a soldier's greatest danger. I have seen units fail not because they lacked strength, but because they underestimated what stood beside them." Doran stepped forward, his tone shifting into something more formal. "Given the classification revealed on this screen, command structure for this mission will be adjusted. All units present, including myself, will operate under revised guidance for the duration of this operation." Vren's jaw tightened, but he gave a slow nod, the kind of gesture that showed respect even when pride made it difficult to offer. "I misjudged you," he said simply. "I will not do so again." I nodded once. Judgment based on assumption rarely survives contact with truth. The mission briefing continued, but the atmosphere in the room had changed completely. Where there had been mockery, there was now attentiveness. Where there had been dismissive glances, there were now careful, respectful ones. The soldiers who had laughed loudest now listened closest, waiting for any word I might offer, any signal that might guide their next move. As the operation began, alarms shifted from briefing tones to deployment tones, and the room emptied quickly, soldiers moving toward their designated transports. Vren walked beside me for a moment, his earlier bravado replaced by something quieter, something closer to curiosity. "Why did you never correct us?" he asked. "You could have shown your rank from the beginning." "Rank does not need to be announced to be real," I said. "I did not need your respect to do my duty. I needed only your cooperation, which I now have." He considered this for a moment, then gave a short nod before moving toward his post. The transport doors opened, and cool air rushed into the corridor as we prepared to move out. Threk approached briefly, his earlier mockery replaced with something like professional caution. "If you need anything during this operation," he said, "you need only say the word." "I will," I said, "but understand, silence will remain my default. It has kept me and those around me safe more times than words ever could." He nodded and stepped back, allowing me to move ahead of him toward the transport. As I took my position, I glanced briefly at Doran, who offered a short nod of acknowledgement, one that carried none of the earlier tension from the briefing room. It was the kind of nod exchanged between soldiers who understood, without needing further explanation, that trust had shifted the moment truth became visible. The engines of the transport hummed to life, vibration rolling gently through the floor beneath our boots. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into long streaks of light as the ship prepared to move. I stood quietly among soldiers who, only an hour earlier, had mocked my silence as a flaw. Now that same silence had become something they respected, something they were beginning to understand. I did not need to explain further. I did not need applause, apologies, or recognition beyond what the screen had already revealed. What mattered now was the mission ahead, and the fact that the soldiers around me finally understood a simple truth. Silence was never weakness. It was discipline, earned through fire, carried quietly, waiting only for the moment it needed to speak.